4:40 p.m., the NYPD received several 911 calls of a man described as a male black, wearing a brown jacket, pointing what is described as a silver firearm at people on the street. 3 different 911 callers described the man with the gun pointing it at people on the street.
Saheed came from a good family, and they have no right to shoot him down the way how they did it, because Saheed is no gunman. And if Saheed has something in his hand, if the cop didn't even shot him into his leg and he's paralyzed, I would have taken care of him.
Good evening and welcome to Metro Focus. I'm Jenna Flanagan. We begin tonight with the death of Shaheed Vassell. The 34-year-old who suffered from bipolar disorder was shot dead by police on Wednesday evening in the Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn after officers mistakenly believed he was carrying a gun. It was later discovered after 10 rounds had been fired at Mr. Vassell that the item in his hand was in fact a metal pipe. At the order of the mayor, surveillance footage of Vassell has been released showing him brandishing that metal object at the scene where he was later shot dead. The state's attorney general, Eric Schneiderman, has now confirmed his office will be investigating the death. A vigil was held last night in Crown Heights to remember the life of Mr. Vassell and to demand a full investigation into the events that surrounded the fatal shooting. That rally was led by a number of legislators, including State Senator Jesse Hamilton, who I'm pleased to welcome to the program. Senator Hamilton, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jenna.
First, I want to start with the issue of the police to begin with, because we now know that there were community police in the neighborhood who knew Mr. Vassell, who interacted with him, and who also understood that he had mental health issues. Yet they're not the ones who responded to this call.
Right.
Why was that the case?
This is like a wider problem on broken windows policing, where we have for decades now in New York City, police officers overreacting to minor crimes in black communities with excessive force. And so Shaheed was a young man with mental issues. He was known in the community. He went to church every Sunday. He helped out women in the community, old ladies in the community. And so he was known as a good kid that had mental issues. And so the outcry from the community is that, why did you have to gun him down? They literally cornered him in the corner, and from community accounts, there were 19 shots fired, of which 9 hit him. And so we have a problem within the police department of dehumanizing certain people of color in our communities, especially young black men. And so the question is, had Shaheed been a person that was white, would the police have been as quickly to respond as far as shooting and killing him?
Well, there's so many different questions that, of course, feed into that, but one of them is the 911 call. What we now have heard is that people who are calling 911 were saying, we think this man has a gun, or this person looks like they have something that might be a gun. Yet when it got to the dispatcher letting the police know, the dispatcher said he has a gun. So is that really the fault of the police? When they arrived, they assumed that they were going someplace where someone had a gun.
No, it was not the fault of the police. I saw the video, and looking at it, it appeared to be as a shower head that could have been looked at as being a gun. An officer had to have maybe a split second to react to what's happening. But the calls did not say he shot somebody. They say it's a man possibly with a gun. And so when that...
But that's not what the police heard.
That's what the police heard.
Yeah.
But the police did not hear someone was shot. The police heard a man may have a gun, does have a gun. So if you know someone has a gun, how do you approach that person? Do you approach the person to tell them to stop, put your hands up, wait? Do you approach them from a distance and then close in on the person, giving directives on what to do? Or do you just come right up on the person and within a split second just start shooting? And so that's the issue of how do we deal with people with mental health issues? Because the average person who's not going to carry a gun or a fake gun and wave it around the community. So obviously there was an issue here. The second question is, how do we address people with mental issues? And a lot of times people with mental issues who encounter the police usually die. And so I want to make sure that we have training for police officers. Last year I passed a law that every police officer take a CPR course. I saw a young man, Rashid Irving, get shot, and when the police came, they did not know how to do CPR. And so I passed a law last year that every police officer and state trooper take a CPR course every 2 years. We need the same thing for police officers now with mental health training. Okay, so if someone has a gun, how do I respond? If this person has a mental health issue, this person is a threat, do we go in with a split second determination on life and death, or do we approach it in a different manner, in a holistic manner? He may have a gun. Is he threatening someone? He was not threatening anyone.
But in the video that we've seen, of what's been released of the video at least, we see this young man with this metal pipe who's brandishing it in a very menacing way. I mean, it does at first glance look as if this person might have a gun. But
he still is a person with a mental disability. And the question is, in his mind, he's thinking it's a play. He's just walking around the community. He may be reacting as far as he might have had a bad day, he didn't have his meds, and he was acting maybe in a menacing way. But the question is, if someone doesn't take their medication, has a mental issue, and encounters the police officers, should that result in that person's death? And it's a disproportionate amount of people who encounter the police with mental issues of color who die, versus those who are not of color, who don't die.
Well, when it comes to the issue of mental health, because we also know that so many of the people in the community knew that Shaheed had these mental health issues, and of course, even his family acknowledged that he wasn't taking his meds. Is there any responsibility that his family bears for him not taking his meds? Should they have stepped in and forced him to do so?
Jenna, that's a great point. And my office, my Senate office, is on top of a psychiatric center. So I want to make sure that and it's a stigma in our community. There's a stigma in the communities of color of seeing a psychiatrist or psychologist. And that's why we're trying to get more social workers into the schools. I started the campus in Brownsville. We have psychiatrists and social workers talking to children in the community to find out what trauma they're experiencing. Just growing up in NYCHA housing, growing up in a shelter, just growing up being black sometimes can have a side effect. So the question is, we can't mandate that he take his medication, but the question is, how do we create laws and get services?
I do want to turn a little bit to the vigil and the march that happened in Brooklyn. This is all happening right on the heels of the shooting in California of the young man Stephon Clark. And I'm wondering, what was the mood of the community at the protest?
I mean, it's a lot of anger. We had the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King 50 years ago. And we're still facing some of the same issues that he was talking about 50 years ago.
Well, of course, Senator, you were with the family at the vigil and then, of course, the protest. And I think what we really try to understand when it comes to these shootings is, what does justice look like for these families? What does the Vassell family want?
Justice can't bring him back. So it probably will be a lawsuit. He'll probably will win, because we have not seen the response from the police arriving and them shooting him. We just see him menacing people, but you don't see the footage of the police getting on the scene and him being shot. How much time elapsed between the police officers arriving on the scene and them actually shooting him? That's the question that has not been answered. And I'm sure they do have the videotape. The question is, why haven't they shown it? They only show one side of the story. There's always two sides, maybe one in the middle, but the other side of the story has not been shown on the actual encounter between the police and Mr. Vassell. And I think once people see that, they can better understand what happened. But as long as that's a question mark, a lot of questions are going to be answered, need to be answered.
All right, listen, State Senator Jesse Hamilton, thank you so much for joining us on the program. We really appreciate your insight, especially your firsthand account of what took place in Crown Heights, and we, of course, will be following this story very closely.
And thank you, Jennifer, for being concerned.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me on the program. Great to be here.